Welcome, Wargamers, to the faithful scriptures of the Mortal Realms, because today we are talking about one of the most important heroes in the Age of Sigmar setting, a hero that has come up multiple times across the vast timeline that is the Age of Sigmar game, from the launch of the Realm Gate Wars to the current timeline, and that hero's name, of course, is Gardus Steelsoul of the Steel Souls, which is his little, regiment within the Hallowed Knights, one of the very many Stormcasts of the Stormcast Eternals. Now, one thing I'd like to add right up top, if you like this video and you're interested in this faction, please consider using the affiliate link in the description down below. Noble Knight Games is a great store here in the central US with discounts on all Games Workshop products, as well as tons of other miniatures and games. And using that link goes a long way to supporting me, my wife, this channel, our cat. It's life-changing stuff, and I appreciate every single one of you who do. So for those of you who are new to the game, or perhaps new to some of the characters within the Stormcast Eternals, who is Gardus Steelsoul? Simply put, he is a Lord Celestant of the Stormcast Eternals Hallowed Knights Stormhost, as we mentioned before. This means he is essentially a leader. He's a small, lower grade leader, but he's a leader nonetheless. Lord Celestants are perfect heroes for putting together missions to take specific objectives, or lead military campaigns, things like that. A real emphasis on martial pride versus some other stuff like Lord Arcanums might be focused on magic or something like that. Well, Gardus is really focused, of course, on combat. He's featured in many Black Library novels, as well as multiple campaign supplements for Age of Sigmar. And so to kind of list those off here, basically, we have the Realm Gate Wars. He was in the Ghosts of Demensis short story, which will take a few things from Plague Garden, Black Pyramid, like I said, the Realm Gate Wars campaign, but also the storybooks that go with it. And he made a big impact in the Broken Realms series as well. So he's been like a reoccurring character, probably more so than just about any other Stormcast now that I think about it. And of course, I believe it was just last year, maybe the year before, I don't know. Time doesn't mean anything anymore to any of us. He got a model, and it's a baller model. And so what I would like to do is just kind of take apart his life, the little bits that we know from these various stories, kind of put them in a, sort of chronological order. Understand this, there's a bunch of stuff that I am not going to cover because it's all kind of ingrained and enmeshed in these quite lengthy novels. And I have read them, but capturing all the minutiae of where he's been going, like place to place to place, is a bit much. So we're going to do some broad strokes, and I'm going to recommend some literature for you. So the hero who would become Gardus was known originally as Garradin, who came from a simple tribe who lived in Gurran. In fact, his little place that he lived and worked out of was a town called Demesnes Harbor, and he functionally acted as a healer. Now, the general sense I get is that he was around in the Age of Chaos, that things have already broken wild, things are getting overrun, and so he is just trying to take care of many of the sick and dying as he can. Of course, with wars going on all around him, his beds are full, things are not great. I do also get the sense that he's somehow connected to the church because he is faithful to Sigmar during the Age of Chaos, and that would explain why, a church would have outreach programs to help these kinds of people who are broken and sick and that kind of thing. Well, at one point, they are attacked by a chaos force of their own called the Skin Stealer Tribe. They attack this hospital setting where he was, and basically, to put it really simply, there's a lot of myth-making surrounding Gardus. Because he became such a massive hero later on, they kind of this happens in real world too, right? Don't we retroactively make grandiose stories about our real-world heroes? And so this is a point of contention. It's brought up multiple times that there's conflicting accounts about how good he was as a human. There's a story, it's he killed 100 men with nothing but his bare hands. But he didn't kill 100. By his own admission, he didn't really kill much of anything. They busted into his church, he tried to defend his people, he grabbed 2 iron candlesticks and went to fight, but all we know is that he got stabbed in the back with a spear. So there's not a whole lot of grandiose storytelling, which honestly I find refreshing because he's just a dude. Just a dude man bro who got stabbed down. However, on his dying lips, he praised Sigmar, he offered his services, and Sigmar snatched him up for the Anvil of Apotheosis. He was reforged into becoming one of the Hallowed Knights. Now, pause here for a second. Hallowed Knights are a very specific storm host within the Stormcast Eternals army. Sigmar saw fit to group warriors together by their ideals and their values and temperaments, just to kind of make them more cohesive. And so the thing, I guess you could say, quote unquote thing, that makes the Hallowed Knights unique is their faithfulness. No other Storm host deals with the problems in the mortal realms, with an eye for religion like they do. Everything is a rite, it's a prayer, it's all, there is no separation of church and state to them, it's all one mingled mess. Where some of the other ones, they of course worship Sigmar because they're all Stormcast, but they don't have those same kind of rites and that kind of thing. There's no orthodoxy to them. The Hallowed Knights went and made their own, canticles and prayers and structures of faith and this kind of thing. Again, it's how they perceive Sigmar. And then they distribute that across any territories that they conquer. Well, becoming a Hallowed Knight, seeing this soul of pure faith and fire, Sigmar was super impressed with him and so quickly elevated him to the rank of Lord Celestant, meaning he now has independence and authority to go out and kind of execute Sigmar's will on his own. And we actually meet Gardus in the first supplement for Age of Sigmar that ever dropped, and that's the Realmgate Wars. He was sent into Ghyran with a very specific mission: find Alariel. The goddess of life had gone dormant and missing for several generations. Sigmar had no idea where she was, but if he was going to start rebuilding the Pantheon and start pushing back, it's time to start getting the band back together, and we need to find Alariel. So, the first time that all of the Hallowed Knights jumped down or lightning bolt down into Ghyran, they were immediately besieged by Nurgle demons. There's a realm gate there, they're trying to claim realm gates, again, it's the Realm Gate Wars, of course, set up a defensive perimeter, and then Plague Bearers, and I think at some point there was Clan Pestilence forces, all just descend on these guys. And this is where we get to see some of the most memorable things about Gardus, because his little shouts that he does with the Hallowed Knights, you have stuff like, only the faithful, which is only the faithful will stand, that kind of thing, their war cry, if you will. And another one that comes up frequently, and it's actually the first canticle of the Hallowed Knights, is much is demanded of those to whom much is given. All offense, constantly pushing more. And so they basically form this perimeter box, and demons just start coming from literally every direction at them. And the Stormcast are this stalwart wall. You got, Gardus in the dead center giving commands, supplementing different sides of his flanks, that kind of thing. And then his arch nemesis rolls up on the scene. I say that kind of lightly, but a great unclean one named Bolathrax wades into the battle. Now, this is a time in Age of Sigmar history before things like fulminators or long strikes. They had no way of dealing with something like a great unclean one, because at this point it's just liberators and a couple of retributors, which were nasty back in the day, but, not what you want here. And him and Bolathrax start going at it. Once this greater unclean one just rolls into the field, it's one of those things it just crushes straight through the line. It has the power to totally dismantle the formation that they're trying to achieve. And so Gardus takes it on himself. I need to deal with this. How are we going to do this? Well, there's reinforcements coming from a corrupted realm gate. Let's figure that out. And so he starts to fight Bolathrax, takes a few good licks. Every time he cuts the greater demon, it heals up almost immediately. And so Gardus looks at his men that are falling apart, looks at Bolathrax, looks at the realm gate and goes, screw this. And then he just runs into the realm gate. Okay, Bolathrax chases after him, but he's so big and the gate is so small, he breaks the gate chasing after Gardus. So effectively, Gardus has sealed off all reinforcements because the gate's now closed. The Hallowed Knights are then able to, kill the demons that are around them and then kind of be safe for a little bit. However, he locks himself inside the realm of Nurgle. And this was an important turning point in this story because nobody had gone into the realm of chaos as far as the story setting goes. He's running around like a madman. Basically, it's just like the Forrest Gump meme of just him just running constantly. He just literally does not stop moving because the second he does, corrosion and stuff will swallow his feet. And he's being chased by a great unclean one throughout the entire Garden of Nurgle. At one point, Gardus has a vision of a beautiful woman, beckoning him hey, take this exit. And he could tell there's something different about her, so he doesn't think it's a trick from Nurgle. Turns out it was an aspect of Alariel projecting herself out there to be what's going on? She basically just understood all this weird stuff was happening in Garan, and I guess sent him a little telegraph. And she leads him out of the Garden of Nurgle. In one of the best scenes ever, the Hallowed Knights are in the middle of a fight, and all of a sudden Gardus comes back to his men through the realm gate and just stops and proceeds to lean forward and just barf his guts out, which is like, you deserve that. All right, you can do that. Nobody look, give him a second. And he comes out with this knowledge of where Alarielle is. So he leads his men there, unfortunately not knowing that he's also leading the forces of Nurgle there. A big fight ensues where he is again snatched up by, demons and all these kinds of things. I think the Glotkin wasn't there. I have to think about that for a second. But they get into a huge fight at the doorstep of where Alarielle is holding up and is getting just basically ripped apart physically. And one of his subordinates, out of mercy, shoots an arrow and kills Gardus and basically makes him fire back to Azir. And that was it for Gardus for a little bit. He needed to chill. Like, the dude earned a rest. Of course, later on in that story, they find Alarielle, they, kind of bring her back to her ascendancy. So Gardus has officially succeeded at his mission, right? He did what needed to be done to protect his men so that they could carry on their mission. When he came back and saw that, he just went right back into the fight after running through the Garden of Nurgle for some time. It's just this interesting thing where it's like, man, this guy's a hero, and that's exactly why people fell in love with him. Now, from the Realmgate Wars, that's like the firm introduction. We know when that happened timeline-wise. The books that come up next are a little bit more ambiguous regarding their exact time frame, like in terms of like what year it is or how long it's been since the Realmgate Wars, that kind of stuff. And those stories are the Black Pyramid, which is basically an invasion story of the Steel Souls being sent into an area to reclaim some land. And then there's also Plague Garden, which is Nurgle really wants to capture a Stormcast to be able to figure out what makes them tick. And so it's this whole story regarding the Garden of Nurgle and the Steel Souls as they try to kind of wade through the action there. But yeah, things we actually know for certain, after the Realmgate Wars, they aided in the construction of Hammerhal Gyra, so the Garan half of Hammerhal, which is a pretty cool thing. They had a few run-ins with Nagash, or at least the Steel Souls did, his people, whether or not he was there. Sometimes he was away doing other things, and the Steel Souls still interacted with all kinds of nastiness in the realms. At one point, there's actually a short story where he returns to his hometown when he was human, Demensis. And while Sigmar was getting ready for all these big plans in Shyish, he pops back into his hometown and he finds out he's being worshipped as a saint. They call him Saint Garadan, which is cool. And he had an active hand in the founding of Gravewild, which I do believe was the main story within the Black Pyramid. Now we're going to speed up a little bit here because again, those books don't have a very distinct timeline thing, but we can fast forward up to the Broken Realm series, where he makes another appearance. In fact, a few appearances. He inadvertently ends up talking to Lord Kroak, who, even though Lord Kroak doesn't speak, he speaks telepathically, shows Gardus all the things that are about to happen in Vindicarum and sends him off to go aid all the Celestial Vindicators as Be'lakor is about to rock their world. Basically, his faithfulness and his clarity of thought, I think, is what it is that sets him apart, is why the Seraphon trust him to have this discourse of you are someone who, believes in the mystical, believes in religion, you're faithful to Sigmar, there's no signs of doubt in you, and also I'm going to show you these visions, and I'm going to trust that you can put them together. And so that's exactly what Gardus does. And so for a character who's been so prominent, in all the stories, you compare him to someone who came out at the exact same time, Vandus Hammerhand. Okay, well, we followed him in the Realmgate Wars. There's a couple mentions of him in some other books, but he functionally disappeared from the lore. There's no current stories about where Vandus is, but we do know what Gardus is up to, and I love it. I actually think he's a stronger character because he doesn't, if you don't know, Vandus can have visions of the future and things like this. I like that Gardus doesn't have anything special technically about him. There's nothing really supernatural other than being a Stormcast, but he doesn't have some extra power. He's just a dude. Always has been, is super cool. And so let's start moving into why I think that this is so cool. Why is Gardus so lauded as a hero? I think a lot of times when Black Library novelists write stuff, they mentioned in an interview once that what you do is you set the norm and then you have your standout characters go against it. Okay, for example, the norm of Hallowed Knights is rigorous religious exercise. They have their own, sepulcher, and they have their own faith rites and all these kinds of things, the religiosity, if you will. And if you just read that in a vacuum, you'd be like, oh man, these guys are like stuffy. They're all about circumstance and that kind of thing. But then you look at Gardus, who takes those traits, right? He doesn't break them. He still, is a man of faith and that kind of thing. But he takes it in a direction where it's not mindless. He adds that human element to the religious, zone that makes it a beautiful and wonderful thing. The courage to look at a realm gate that leads directly to hell and the great unclean one chasing him and be like, the best thing I can do for all of my people, my subordinates, is to run through that gate. And he just does it. The best thing I can do for all the citizens of Vindicarum is to go there and help them with these defenses. Where a lot of times, religious-based factions tend to have, a lack of clarity when it comes to what really needs to be done because they're so preoccupied with their rites and their rituals and all this kinds of stuff. Gardus stands out because he has all those rites and rituals, but also this supervision to know exactly what needs to be done and the conviction to make it happen. They also break the mold from a lot of, I would say, Black Library tropes of religious factions just because, they have doubts. And there's actually a great quote here I want to read to you. This is Gardus to another Hallowed Knight, Ramus. He says, "Faith must always renew itself. There is no end, no final answer. Only the eternal search, and the dance of starlight on the surface of the water. But even if there are no answers to be had, the questions must be asked, lest we become complacent or worse. Your doubts are ours. Your questions are ours as well. You do not suffer them alone." And I love that. It's a beautiful quote because it's like, you can get lost in the religiosity of a faction, but then there's just that human element of like, yeah, but dude, we all have doubts. But we're here to do what we do. We were given so much, and we have so much to do with it. And because of that, he's just one of the best characters that Games Workshop's written, in my opinion, where he has these aspects of like stoic faith and like the hard line of, religious, zeal that permeates a lot of 40k and Age of Sigmar lore, depending on the factions, but also mixed with utter and complete humanity. The man was a healer in life. He cares about people. Now, how much of that he's lost since he's been reforged so many times, I don't know, but he still retains it to this day, at least as far as we know. He's iconic. He has like a cool catchphrase, right? Only the faithful. Anytime you're at a tournament and there's a Hallowed Knights player, they should be yelling that at the top of their lungs because it's awesome. And he's just a standout character. So let me know your favorite part of Gardus' history. If you had a particular scene in Plague Garden or Black Pyramid that you really, really liked, go ahead and leave it in the comments down below. I would love to read it. Like I said, there's a bunch of like small moments. I think a lot of the Black Library writers, they create individual scenes that they want to present. And so, it's hard to kind of go over every single point by point. So if you have a specific scene that you think is important, please leave in the comments down below. As far as specific scenes for me that stand out regarding Gardus, it's definitely our introduction to him. Just him doing the math of the demons, the realm gate, Bolathrax, the great unclean one, right in front of him, and then just booking it. Like there's no greater sacrifice because he knew at that point if you go into the realm of chaos and you die, you're not going back to Azir. So while all of his men are, quote unquote, falling or dying, they're going to get back up because they're going to Azir. He chose the path that would prevent that. It was a true sacrifice in a faction that's all about sacrifice. So anyway, friends, that's my thoughts. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you in my next video. Happy wargaming.